Oh, ACC. I know I completely shit on you at the end of last season, but looking back at it, the way things ended up was a once-in-a-generation comedy. I needed the hilarity of underpowered Duke ending up in the championship and winning the motherfucker, considering how the SEC championship likes reruns and the Big Ten championship made me fucking rage quit. The bad news is that, much like in the pros, when anything goofy like that pops up, the league is quick to pop that balloon with a rusty nail. They've allegedly fixed the tiebreaker loophole that let Duke get in over the more powerful Miami. But no. It feels like seeing modern McDonald's compared to one from just 20 years ago. The soul's been taken away, but the husk is still there. While I mourn the loss of the colorful play places my kids will never have the joy of experiencing, let's see what the ACC is ordering up at this time. But first, I gotta pay my bills.
Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
This video is sponsored by PrizePicks, America's #1 sports picks app. The ACC is a weird conference right now. You've got old powers trying to prove they still run the place, newer programs trying to kick the door in, and everyone else desperately hoping they're not the team that gets turned into somebody else's statement win. That's where PrizePicks comes in. PrizePicks is a daily fantasy sports app, and instead of trying to predict the entire damn conference, you can just focus on a few players and projections you actually like. Just pick more or less on whatever stats you want to look at. Passing yards, rushing yards, points, touchdowns, whatever sport you're following, find the projection and build your lineup. You can also make team picks, including who wins and what the point spread of the victory might be. And if you don't trust either team enough to pick a winner, you can even pick the total points scored in a game. That is the biggest appeal for me. I have been dying in these previews. I have to look at rosters, stats, schedules, transfer portal moves, and it has completely turned my brain to soup. So when I find a player or matchup that I like, it is really nice that I can just build a lineup around that. And you know what? I feel really good about myself. And that's why I am picking the Minnesota Vikings to win. I'm just kidding. It's the Bengals that are going to win the goddamn Super Bowl. Try me, bitch! PrizePicks is now available in most of the United States, including California, Florida, and Texas. And right now, they have changed up the new player offer. When you play your first $5 lineup or more, win it, and you will get $150 in bonus lineups. Just use code HMA when you sign up. Again, code HMA. Win your first $5 or more lineup and get $150 in bonus lineups. Just hit the link in the description and check out PrizePicks, America's #1 sports picks app. And as always, play responsibly.
We now join our regularly scheduled programming already in progress.
At this point, I seriously have to question what the Boston College administration is even watching. Last year wasn't merely bad, it was damn near rock bottom. The Eagles went 2-10, their worst season since 2012. They lost 10 straight games, finished 1-7 in the ACC, and their only conference win came against Syracuse in the final game of the season. That isn't a rough patch, kids. That's the football equivalent of being found face down dead behind a Dunkin' Donuts. You know what? I can't even fucking speak about this shit anymore. I'm gonna let some other poor son of a bitch take over this segment. Illogical, get your ass in here.
To say that Boston College is the college football shit show of the entirety of the NCAA is a fucking understatement. You gotta remind yourself that this is a school that mainly focuses on hockey and not football. Their football team is about as equivalent as the fucking Cleveland Browns. Full of shit. And it doesn't help that Bill O'Brien is full of shit. They are not fucking good by any stretch of the goddamn imagination. 2-10 last year after everything that this fucking franchise has been through. Boston College is a fucking train wreck. It's hard to fucking put into words just how bad this team was last season. The stakes are high for this team this year. By God, and if Bill O'Brien does not wake his goddamn ass up from his Houston Texan days then I fear his ass is going to be going to the unemployment line. And in Boston's economy? Ha! Good fucking luck. They'll fucking drive you out of town faster than they did the British. This is a team that really puts the black eye on Boston sports. This is a joke of a fucking team. Hell, it doesn't help that a lot of their big guys fucked off elsewhere or went to the NFL. I mean, let's put it this way. Their schedule is rough. Try the second hardest schedule in all of the ACC. You start the year with Cincinnati, and you start with a Big Ten team in Rutgers. Then you got friggin' SMU in Dallas, followed by Georgia Tech, Duke, fucking Notre Dame, and Syracuse to end the year, with your final matchup being against fucking Miami. Is this the team you really want fucking playing football in the ACC? Hell, if I didn't know any better, this is a fucking MAC team. That is how atrocious they fucking are. I may not be a fan of Boston College, but let me tell you, seeing these fuckers on the news for disappointment after disappointment, week in, week out, is by far more fucking embarrassing than the Red Sox blowing the fucking World Series against the Mets in '86. And that was 40 years ago. Oh my God. You know what? Just to fucking really put the nail in the coffin and just to see for myself how bad this is, I might have to subject myself to go to a game. Let me call Brent and see if he wants to tag along. I'm sure this won't end in disaster, right?
After years of stagnation, the California Golden Bears have something new within their ranks. Hope. Actual fucking hope. Cal went 7-6 last season, and while that wasn't anything spectacular, it was their first winning season since 2019, and most importantly, it finally brought an end to the Justin Wilcox era. Enter Tosh Lupoi, who inherits something Cal hasn't exactly had very often. A quarterback worth building around. Jaren Sagabul. Fuck that shit. JKS burst onto the scene as a freshman last year and threw for 3,454 yards and 18 touchdowns. Then he decided to stick around through the coaching change. That alone changes the entire outlook here, because Cal has won more than 7 games once in the last 10 years and hasn't posted a winning conference record since 2009. That is an astonishing amount of football purgatory. Lupoi has at least given JKS more to work with. The receiver room got upgraded through the portal. Adam Muhammad comes over from Washington to help the running game, and Dorian Thomas arrives from New Mexico at tight end. So offensively, there are legitimate reasons to think this could be a better season than last year. The problem is the defense, because apparently Cal decided hope needed to come with terms and conditions. They have to replace 5 defenders who earned either all ACC honors or an honorable mention last year. Linebackers Cade Ululave and Luke Ferrelli both transferred out, and the secondary has to be rebuilt under first-year defensive coordinator Michael Hutchins. So while the quarterback position feels more stable than it has in years, the other side of the ball is basically standing there holding a toolbox and some loose screws. And this isn't the Big 12, where defense can be occasionally treated like optional software upgrades. You got burned enough last year. Fix it. The good news is the schedule gives them a chance. The non-conference slate is manageable. They avoid Miami in the regular season, and UCLA, Clemson, and Stanford are the game's AP highlights as their big ones. So for once, I'm actually interested in seeing what Cal can become instead of waiting for another 6 or 7 win season to dissolve into the fog. Tosh Lupoi has a quarterback. He's upgraded the roster, and there's finally a little bit of momentum in Berkeley. Just get the defense figured out before the JKS transfer rumors start writing themselves.
I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna make it. This is the greatest thrill of my life. I'm king of the world. Woohoo! Woohoo!
There comes a point where you have to move on. The Bengals eventually did it with Marvin Lewis, so perhaps these Tigers will finally get the fucking hint. Clemson entered last season ranked 4th in the country with an experienced roster, a quarterback that people were talking about as a potential number 1 NFL draft pick, and legitimate national title expectations. They finished 7-6 and didn't even make the ACC title game.
You know, to win, you got to not lose.
Thank you, Dabo. Incredible insight. Somebody alert Harvard. A team with national title ambitions couldn't even win the fucking Pinstripe Bowl. And if not for catching fire after that game where Louisville and Clemson both got cooked like a fucking tombstone pizza, they could have missed bowl season entirely. And now I'm supposed to believe that last year was just some kind of fluke? Dabo himself is calling it an aberration, pointing to 15 straight winning seasons and insisting that Clemson isn't declining. Buddy, you went from preseason number 4 to unranked entering 2026 for the first time since 2011. At some point, the evidence starts to become difficult to ignore. Cade Klubnik is gone, so Christopher Vizina takes over after 2 years as the backup. He does at least inherit some good options at wide receiver. TJ Moore had 837 receiving yards last year. Bryant Wesco Jr. led the team with 6 touchdown catches, and both averaged more than 16 yards per reception, so there is some talent here. Nobody is arguing Clemson suddenly turned into Kent State, but the defense has problems. They were excellent against the run last season, finishing 16th nationally, but now they're thin at linebacker and both starting safeties left through the portal. Dabo even finally broke and started to bring transfers in, only to have Luke Farrelly transfer in from Cal and then abruptly fuck off for Ole Miss, leading Dabo to accuse Ole Miss of tampering and send evidence of it to the NCAA. Beautiful. Even when the man uses the portal finds a way to piss him off. Clemson added more transfers elsewhere, so spare me the ancient Dabo doesn't use the portal excuse. He's trying to adapt. The question is whether he's adapting fast enough, because this program used to measure success in national titles. Now we're discussing whether 7-6 was merely an unfortunate little oopsie. It's been years since Clemson felt truly relevant to the national title picture, and last year made it look less like a temporary downturn and more like the sport passing them by. Maybe Dabo is able to prove me completely wrong. Maybe Vizinia lights up the conference and Clemson comes roaring back. But I'm not going to automatically assume that the Tigers are elite because the logo says Clemson. As the great philosopher taught us, to win, you gotta not lose. Clemson tried the other approach last year, it didn't fucking work. The last boat down the Savannah River is almost gone, Dabo. You might want to decide whether you're getting the fuck on. Duke, we will never forget what you did for us. Because finishing the regular season 7-5, somehow backing your ass into the ACC title game, winning the motherfucker, and then finishing 9-5 is one of the most beautifully stupid things this conference has ever produced. Duke won its first outright football ACC championship in 63 years. Oh, the memes were glorious. The chaos was absolutely magnificent. Long may they live. Unfortunately, I also think there's a pretty decent chance we will never see anything like that from this team again, because last year felt like lightning in a bottle, and a lot of that bottle is gone. Duke lost 15 starters. Darian Mensah took his nearly 4,000 passing yards and 34 touchdowns to Miami after that whole legal fight. And apparently Miami wasn't satisfied with stealing the quarterback because Cooper Barkate went with him too. Say it with me, kids. Money talks, bullshit walks. Actually, now that I mention it, Duke lost its top 3 receivers. So yeah, the passing game is basically getting rebuilt from scratch. Walker Agate comes over from San Jose State after throwing for more than 3,000 yards and 17 touchdowns last season. But he's also coming back from a knee injury that required surgery. The good news is Nate Shepard's still here. He ran for 1,132 yards and 11 touchdowns last season, ended the year with 4 straight games scoring on the ground, and Duke returns enough pieces on the offensive line that the running game should probably become the foundation of this offense. Defensively, though, there is uncertainty everywhere. There's some experience at linebacker and in the secondary, but Duke is replacing a ton of starters and figuring out who the hell actually takes over. And apparently, I'm not the only one expecting regression. The defending ACC champions were picked 10th in the conference. Their biggest games include Virginia, Miami, and Clemson, although they do get at least North Carolina and Boston College and Stanford. The 3 teams picked at the bottom of the league. So could Duke go 7-5 again? Yeah, absolutely. Could Manny Diaz keep this thing respectable? Sure, I don't doubt that. But another ACC title, I'm going to need to see that shit before I believe it. Last year was magical, last year was stupid, last year was exactly why this conference is fucking hilarious. Duke, thank you for your service. We will always have the memes. Since they threw their almighty hissy fit after being left out of the 2023 playoff, Florida State has gone 7-18. 7-18. They followed up that beautiful 2-10 disaster with a 5-7 season last year, which I guess technically qualifies as improvement if your standards have fallen through the fucking floor. And somehow, Mike Norvell is still here, which can only mean one thing. God fucking damn it.
And now, for the next few minutes, as the Doak burns.
Back at the home of the battered bastards of Tallahassee, Mike Norvell enters year 7 at Florida State with what might be the hottest seat in college football. And to this point, no one knows what the administration is wanting to see. Florida State is 3-13 in ACC play over the last 2 seasons. They've lost 11 straight road games. Norvell has 4 losing seasons at Florida State, which is as many as Willie Taggart, Jimbo Fisher, and Bobby Bowden combined over the previous 44 years. What the fuck? Don't worry. This time the transfers are gonna fix everything. Because apparently you have learned absolutely fucking nothing. Another off-season, another collection of mercenaries gets shipped into Tallahassee and asked to save Mike Norvell's job. Ashton Daniels comes in from Auburn at quarterback. Quintrevion Wisner arrives from Texas. Xavier Chaplin comes over from Auburn. Rylan Kennedy from Texas A&M. And the secondary is getting rebuilt with more transfers. Norvell has taken the play-calling duties back after Gus Malzahn retired. Because when your house is already engulfed in flames, the solution is apparently to grab the fucking flamethrower. There are pieces here. Deuce Robinson is back after 1,081 receiving yards and 6 touchdowns. And Mekhi Danzy averaged with an ACC best 21 yards per catch as a freshman. But now we are left with many questions. Is Ashton Daniels actually the answer at quarterback? Or is he just the latest name thrown in from the transfer portal roulette wheel? Can Mike Norvell finally build something that lasts longer than one offseason? Can this defense stop hemorrhaging games? Can Florida State win on the road again? Can they actually contend in the ACC instead of spending another season giving excuses? Does Norvell taking the play calling back fix anything? Or does it just put his fingerprints even more directly on the crime scene? Are all these transfers actually pieces of a real team? Or are we about to watch another collection of mercenaries discover that our roster talent and roster chemistry are 2 very different fucking things? Can Deuce Robinson and Mekhi Danzy give this offense enough firepower to matter? Can Florida State finally stop living in the shadow of that 2023 playoff snub? And most importantly, if this thing starts falling apart again, does Mike Norvell even make it to the end of the season? Will the administration finally send him down to Lake Bradford Road? Do the fans beat him to it? Does Doak Campbell Stadium finally stop smoldering and just completely fucking combust? These questions and more will be answered this season as the Doak burns. Jesus fucking Christ, will it fucking end already? You know, I really wanted to avoid talking about uniforms in this video, but Georgia Tech has made that impossible, because after spending years with that slick navy and gold look, they apparently decided to fix something that wasn't fucking broken and went back to black and gold. You somehow made Georgia Tech look less like Georgia Tech. But uniform aside, there's a much bigger question here. What exactly does this team look like without Haynes King? Because Georgia Tech went 9-4 last year, won 9 games for the first time since 2016, and stayed in the playoff conversation until late November. That is legitimately impressive. But King was also doing damn near everything. He led the team with 953 rushing yards and scored 15 rushing touchdowns. Your quarterback led the team in rushing yards. So Brent Key better have another plan now that the human emergency button is playing in the NFL. Enter Alberto Mendoza. Yes, Fernando Mendoza's brother. He spent last season sitting behind Fernando during Indiana's national title run. Again, I can't believe that actually fucking happened. Jesus Christ. And now he gets his first opportunity to actually be QB1. And if Brent Key tries to use Alberto exactly like he used Haynes King, good fucking luck. Fortunately, he shouldn't have to, just as Haynes comes over after rushing for 857 yards and 10 touchdowns at Michigan, despite suffering a season-ending injury in October, and Malachi Hosley is back after leading the Georgia Tech running back room last year with 697 yards and 7 scores. That is a really interesting backfield, honestly. The receiving core, however, got gutted. Malik Rutherford, Isaiah Canyon, and Eric Rivers Jr. are all gone after combining for over 1,600 yards, 125 catches, and 9 touchdowns. Georgia Tech brought in 19 transfers overall. They've changed coordinators on both sides of the ball, and suddenly a team that felt pretty established last year has a lot of new shit to figure out. At least the defense still has Kyle Efford and EJ Lightsey back after combining for 156 tackles. But the season doesn't exactly provide a long warm-up period. Colorado first, which, okay, sure, Colorado, what the fuck ever. But then you got Tennessee. And later, you've got Duke, Louisville, Clemson, and Georgia. So, not writing Georgia Tech off, Brent Key has produced 3 straight winning seasons, and there was clearly much more to this team than one quarterback. But 2026 is where we find out how much more. Because a one-trick pony can only carry you so far, especially when that pony is now in a different stable. And no, the black uniforms still don't fucking pop. Is it bad that the most notable thing I remember about Louisville last year is them completely botching that Clemson game? Or is that just the pizza talking? Who the fuck knows anymore? Either way, Louisville continues to be the Rodney Dangerfield of the ACC. No respect. There are flashier teams, bigger disasters, louder fan bases, and somehow the Cardinals just keep quietly winning 9 games while everybody else looks somewhere else. They went 9-4 last year, started 7-1, beat Miami, and looked like a legitimate ACC title contender before everything started to fall apart. A stumble against Virginia helped crack the door open, then came that 3-game losing skid, and just like that, Louisville went from conference title threat to another good but not great season. The really irritating part is that 3 of their losses came by a combined 7 points. This team was just not that far away from being great, and Jeff Brom clearly knows it. Miller Moss is off to Chicago, so now former Ohio State quarterback Lincoln Kienholz gets the keys after spending 3 years in Columbus. He barely played last season, completing 11 of 14 passes for 139 yards and a touchdown, so there's obviously some projection involved here. But whoever is playing quarterback gets one hell of a running game behind him. Isaac Brown is back after rushing for 884 yards and 7 touchdowns despite missing 3 games. Kewan Brown added 704 yards and 6 scores, and both averaged 7.3 yards per carry. Defensively, Louisville was only the second in the ACC in total defense last year, but Clev Lubin is the only returning player among their top 5 tacklers. So somebody else is going to have to step up. The schedule is pretty favorable. You don't have Miami, no Clemson, no Virginia. They were picked 3rd in the ACC behind Miami and SMU, and considering they've now won at least 9 games in 3 straight seasons, maybe people should quit acting like Louisville is some random background character. If they could stop being inconsistent and quit passing the ranch when they should be eating the fucking pizza, maybe they could finally grab a slice of the ACC championship pie. God damn it, now I want pizza again. To say Miami has lofty expectations this year would be underselling it massively, because somehow Despite once again failing to even make the ACC title game last year, Miami went 13-3, made the college football playoff, and proceeded to go on a run all the way to the national championship before running face first into the scowl of Curt Cignetti in Indiana. So we can make fun of Mario Cristobal all we want, and trust me, I will. This is still the same man who periodically looks at basic game management and decides, you know what, fuck that. But once you get past the occasional crystal ball-induced aneurysm, this is a really fucking good football team. Miami has now won 10 games in back-to-back seasons for the first time since the early 2000s. And despite constantly replacing huge pieces through the portal, they've basically become plug-and-play at this point. Cam Ward leaves? Bring in Carson Beck. Oh, Beck's now gone for the NFL? Fuck it, get Darian Mensah. Mensah comes over from Duke after throwing for nearly 4,000 yards and 34 touchdowns last year. And considering how well this strategy worked with Beck, I'm not exactly betting against them figuring it out again. Mensah also gets Malachi Toney, who only led the entire country with 109 catches last year. Mark Fletcher Jr. is back after passing on the NFL, and the running back room is loaded. Miami kept offensive coordinators Shannon Dawson, defensive coordinator Corey Heatherman, and Jason Taylor. That continuity matters because there are some major holes. Francis Mauga went 10th overall in the NFL draft. Ruben Bain Jr. and Akeem Mesidor are gone from a defensive line that was absolutely terrifying last year, and there are new starters coming in on the offensive line. But Miami has reached the point where losing NFL talent doesn't really mean starting over. They just went shopping again. And now 88% of the ACC preseason voters have picked Miami to finally win the fucking conference. Finally being the important word there. Miami has been in the ACC for 22 fucking years. And ACC championships amount to 0, not 1. They played for a national title last year before they managed to win their own conference. That is one of the most Miami things imaginable. But with the ACC changing the tiebreaker system, a loaded roster, another high-end transfer quarterback, and legitimate playoff expectations, this might finally be the year. Miami isn't just good enough to win the ACC, they're good enough to win the whole fucking thing. Now Mario Cristobal just needs to avoid doing something catastrophically stupid against some random ACC team in October. There comes a time when you start wondering whether certain teams have individual seasons anymore, or if everything is just melting together into one giant muddy pile of football shit. Dave Doran's NC State had about the most Dave Doran's NC State season imaginable last year. They went 8-5, won a bowl game, and were neither remotely terrifying nor remotely embarrassing. They continued existing in that special Wolfpack dimension where everything always seems destined to end somewhere between pretty good and, well, that happened. Doran is entering year 14 at NC State. He's already the winningest coach in program history, and he's won 8 or 9 games in 7 of the last 9 seasons. Yet NC State has reached double-digit wins exactly once in its entire program history, which was back in 2002. I was in 2nd grade in 2002. I'm 31. So when people wonder whether this program's better days are behind it, I understand why. The frustrating part is there's enough here to keep them respectable again. CJ Bailey is back after throwing for 3,105 yards and 25 touchdowns, while completing nearly 69% of his passes. Nice. And Duke Scott takes over at running back after producing 595 yards in limited work. But only 4 offensive starters and 3 defensive starters are returning. And that defense has gone from genuinely good a few years ago to allowing more than 400 yards per game over the last 2 seasons. So naturally, NC State was picked 7th in the ACC. Because where the fuck else would NC State be picked? And at least nothing particularly stupid happened this offseason. Oh, for fuck's sake! Katron Evans transferred in from Marshall expecting to help at nose guard, but he needed an NCAA waiver for another year of eligibility. He got denied, had the appeal denied too, and is now preparing to sue the NCAA with NC State supporting him. The argument centers around getting his 2023 season back after he didn't play while dealing with 2 deaths in the family, and his mother was being evicted. So apparently we're having an easier time understanding the ACC's championship tiebreakers than figuring out who the hell's allowed to play college football. Regardless, NC State feels like NC State again. Good quarterback, enough pieces to stay competitive, questions everywhere else, and probably heading towards another season where I look up in November and go, huh? Wait, they won 7 games? The more things change, the more Dave Doran remains exactly fucking Dave Doran.
Today, Junior?
Wow. Wow. We have had an entire fucking clown car worth of nonsense this offseason. And somehow, North Carolina has managed to elbow Notre Dame, Texas Tech, and Michigan out of the way and scream, "Move over, the professionals are working!" We already spent last year watching Bill Belichick's experiment become a traveling circus before the season even started, largely thanks to the never-ending saga surrounding future czar of North Carolina, Bill Belichick, and his then-girlfriend Jordan Hudson. And somehow all of that managed to overshadow the fact that the actual football team went 4-8. 4 wins, 5 losses by double digits. Missed a bowl for the first time since 2018. Tens of millions of dollars for Bill Belichick, and the end result was a football team that got its ass kicked more often than it actually won. Surely, after that humiliation, everybody in Chapel Hill sat down, evaluated what went wrong, established some stability, and decided to run a normal fucking football program. Fuck no! Instead, they brought in Bobby Petrino to run the offense. Bobby fucking Petrino. Arkansas sends its condolences. And to be fair, the offense desperately needed somebody because North Carolina finished 118th nationally in scoring at 19.3 points per game and 129th in total offense at 288.8 yards per game. That's not an offense. That's 11 people occupying space while the punter gets called. So now Petrino gets Billy Edwards Jr. from Wisconsin at quarterback, Caleb Jackson from LSU at running back, and another completely reworked roster because apparently Belichick's solution to last year's chemistry experiment is to conduct a second chemistry experiment with even more volatile substances. North Carolina had 70 new players last year. This year they have 60 more, including 40 freshmen. Jesus fucking Christ, Bill. Are you building a football team or replacing the student body? And while Belichick insists they're way ahead of where they were last offseason, even he doesn't know how many growing pains this roster is going to have. That is exceptionally comforting when you're picked 15th in a 17-team conference and now you have to play 5 teams projected in the ACC's top 7. But don't worry, because football itself might not even be the biggest clown show here. Michael Lombardi is out of the picture. There may be a full-scale NCAA investigation coming to Chapel Hill, and somehow this operation continues finding ways to generate headlines that absolutely have nothing to do with winning football games. At this point, I wouldn't be surprised if Jordan Hudson stormed the athletic department, declared herself chancellor for life, and tried to become college football's answer to Marge Schott. What the fuck are we doing here? Bill Belichick was supposed to bring a professional structure to North Carolina. Instead, this thing looks like somebody handed a Super Bowl coach a college football program, dropped Bobby fucking Petrino into the offensive meeting room, threw 60 players through the front door, and then set the building on fire. All to see who could organize a meeting first. And the worst part is there actually are a couple competent pieces buried under the rubble. The pass rush improved last year, and the defensive line might be one area I could look at North Carolina without immediately reaching for the fucking circus horn. But they lost their top 3 tacklers, the offense was atrocious, the schedule got harder, and this team is once again relying on a gigantic collection of strangers to become functional before September. I don't care how many times Belichick says they're ahead of schedule. I don't care how many championship rings are sitting in his fucking office. I don't care how much Bobby Petrino supposedly fixes the offense. You went 4-8. You are projected 15th, and your offseason has generated more compelling television than your football team once again. So no, North Carolina gets absolutely nothing from me. Maybe they improve, maybe they make a bowl, maybe this whole thing works and suddenly I look like an asshole. Or maybe the circus tent catches fire by October and Ramses is sitting half drunk at the end of Chapel Hill Bar wondering what terrible cosmic crime he committed to deserve any of this. If you see him, leave him alone. He is the only innocent fucking party here. You're only invited because of your non-football ACC affiliation. Trust me, I would have loved to make an hour-long video dedicated to God's golden hemorrhoids, but I already did that 2 years ago! Anyways, last year was one of the strangest Notre Dame seasons that I can remember. They opened the year by losing heartbreakers to Miami and Texas A&M by a combined 4 points, then apparently decided losing was beneath God's Irish bastard sons and beat the piss out of everyone else on the schedule. 10 straight wins, every single one by double digits. They averaged 42 points per game, finished second nationally in scoring offense, and then watched the college football playoff from the fucking couch. Naturally, Notre Dame handled this development with all of the grace and dignity you'd expect from Notre Dame, which is to say, absolutely none. Now they entered 2026 ranked 4th in the nation with the subtle and reasonable expectation of national championship or bust. And unfortunately, I can't even call that ridiculous. CJ Carr is back after throwing for 2,700 yards and 24 touchdowns with only 6 interceptions. And now people are throwing around the Heisman hype and potential first-round overall pick hype. Jordan Faison returns. They raided Ohio State's receiver room for Quincy Porter and Mylan Graham. And the offensive line is loaded. The defense might be even worse news for everyone hoping touchdown Jesus finally develops structural problems. 9 of Notre Dame's top 10 tacklers return, with guys like Leonard Moore leading a unit that should absolutely be disgusting. And because apparently the heavens weren't already intervening enough, the new playoff rules mean that if Notre Dame finishes in the committee's top 12, they are guaranteed a playoff spot. So there's not really any excuses left. Marcus Freeman has built a legitimate monster in South Bend. You got the quarterback, you got the defense, you got the depth, you got the playoff access. Just win the fucking thing or shut up about it. As someone who's played his fair share of Dynasty mode on EA College Football, there's always one team that keeps showing up in the playoff bracket no matter how many times you restart. For me, that team is Pitt. Somehow the computer-generated Panthers are consistently more threatening than the actual fucking Pitt Panthers, because the real version has this incredible ability to become ranked and then immediately begin decomposing in real time. Last year was no different. 8 wins, another late season collapse, another reminder that taking Pitt seriously is usually the first step towards disappointment. So naturally, I started trying to figure out what the hell is wrong with this pro. God fucking damn it. No, we are not doing this again. Why does this happen every fucking time I talk about Pitt? Oh, for fuck's sake!
Oh boy, Pitt. Nothing like the college football equivalent of a midwit. You as an outsider may be asking yourself why the hell Narduzzi's still here. Trust us, we all are as well. Thank you, Heather Lyke, for that albatross contract you signed him to. We totally appreciate it. You want to know about the Panthers this year? It's probably going to be the same shit as every other year. They either fall to absolute shit against the MAC school or too early on, or give us a morsel of hope with a strong start only to collapse with an absolute failure to adjust. Cold reality is our only glory in life is relishing in Penn State and West Virginia misery. Or would you rather worry about our hopes and dreams? We pray to the altar of Mason Heinschel. Please don't fall apart like our precious Holstein. Please be the answer we've been dying for since Kenny left for the pros. Please may the Deuce be visited by 3 spirits and evolve to the modern game. Or stumble into another ACC championship, because that would happen to Pitt. I don't know if it happens without Lewis and Biles in the linebacking core, but stranger shit has happened. You're not a Pitt fan if you don't believe in this reality. Or expect a few random jokes throughout the year. That's tradition.
The bad news for SMU is that their perfect record against ACC competition finally died last year. The good news? They were still pretty fucking good. The Mustangs went 9-4, narrowly missed another ACC title game appearance, and now have 20 wins over their first 2 seasons in the conference. The only ACC team with more wins over that stretch is Miami. So I think we can officially stop treating SMU like the weird kid who accidentally wandered into the Power 4. They belong here. And Kevin Jennings is back for one last run. Jennings is 19-7 as SMU's starter, and threw for 3,600 yards and 26 touchdowns last season. He's already sitting within striking distance of SMU's passing records, and if his final year goes the way they're hoping, there's even Heisman talk floating around in Dallas. The problem is a lot of the people around him are new. SMU lost its top 2 rushers and 4 of its top 5 receivers. Although Yamir Knight did come back, he caught 54 passes for 637 yards and 5 touchdowns last year. They also grabbed Kendrick Raphael from Cal after he ran for 943 yards and 13 touchdowns last year. Which is funny because Raphael was also the guy who scored the late touchdown that helped Cal beat SMU and knock them out of the ACC title game. If you can't beat them, apparently just fucking hire them. Defensively, there's a lot of work to do too. SMU finished second to last in FBS teams against the pass last year, allowing 283 yards per game and 26 passing touchdowns. That is fucking horrifying. And with the new defensive coordinator coming in, fixing that has to be priority number 1. Because the opportunity here is just fucking ridiculous. Sure, you got Louisville, you got God's golden sons of bitches. Virginia Tech could be annoying, but one of those isn't even a conference game. And compared to some of the shit other ACC teams are dealing with, SMU has a pretty reasonable path back to Charlotte. They already proved the first year wasn't a fluke. They backed it up last season. Now Jennings gets one final shot. Do not fuck this up. The memes depend on you. The thing about being at rock bottom is there's nowhere to go but up, technically. Stanford would probably like to remind you that 4-8 can in fact become worse. Last year, Frank Reich was brought in as the veteran NFL guy who might be able to stabilize the mess. And the result was 4 wins, which somehow counted as improvement because Stanford had won exactly 3 games in each of the previous 4 seasons. Jesus Christ. This program hasn't had a winning season since 2018. At some point, you gotta stop calling it a rebuild and start calling it an archaeological dig. But now it's a new day in Palo Alto. Tavitu Pritchard is back at Stanford after playing quarterback here, later serving as the offensive coordinator, taking a detour to the NFL, and now returns home as head coach. And honestly, if anybody understands what Stanford football is supposed to look like, it should probably be the guy who has already spent a giant chunk of his adult life inside the building. What he inherits, however, is still a fucking mess. Michigan transfer Davis Warren, holy shit, you're still playing, takes over at quarterback after sitting out last season with an injury. The last time he played extensively, he averaged 5.7 yards per attempt with 9 interceptions and 7 touchdowns. So naturally, he's being asked to revive a passing game Stanford desperately needs to become dangerous again. Have fun with that. The running game at least gives them something resembling stability. Micah Ford is back after rushing for 643 yards in 9 games. And there's experience on the offensive line. Defensively, Matt Rose returns after 108 tackles, 8 tackles for loss, and 3 sacks, while Brandon Nicholson anchors the secondary. So there are some actual football players here. The problem is Stanford has to play Miami, Notre Dame, Louisville, and SMU, because apparently rebuilding gradually is for cowards. I'm not expecting Pritchard to fix this overnight. I'm not even expecting the wall of fucking trees to suddenly become good. I'm asking for signs of life. Be competitive. Stop spending entire seasons as the team everybody forgets is technically still participating. Stanford football used to matter. Now the bar is basically, please don't make 4-8 feel aspirational. Welcome home to Vita. Here's your shovel. Hang on a second. This can't make sense. I thought Syracuse was supposed to be one of those perfectly middle-of-the-pack teams under Fran Brown. How the hell did they go to shit? All right. Steve Angeli tore his Achilles, and the entire fucking operation collapsed around him. As a Bengals fan, I am unfortunately very familiar with the concept of, oh shit, quarterback's out for the year, season's now a funeral. Syracuse went 10-3 in Brown's first year, then fell to 3-9 last season while losing 8 straight after Angeli went down, including that lovely 70-7 execution at Notre Dame. But blaming everything on the quarterback would be way too convenient because the problems go much deeper than that. The defense was one of the worst in the country against the run and was not much better against the pass. The defensive line produced only 20 sacks while allowing 175 rushing yards per game. And the offensive line had its own problems opening holes and keeping quarterbacks upright. Syracuse also lost its top 2 rushers, so there isn't exactly some overwhelming foundation screaming bounce back season. Angeli is healthy again, and at least Fran Brown apparently learned from last year's disaster because now there are actual backup options behind him. Amari Odom, Malachi Nelson, and Daniel Notre all come in to give Syracuse depth at quarterback. The corners might actually be pretty damn good too, with Chris Peel and Demetrius Samuel both returning. And a new defensive coordinator, Vince Carriz, arrives after his Toledo defense ranked second nationally last season. Brown brought in 19 transfers overall trying to patch this shit together. But that's the problem. I look across this roster and I still don't see anything that screams more than middling. The betting line is sitting at 4.5 wins, and even AP says simply reaching 500 and making a bowl would count as a success. So is 3-9 just a horrible injury-driven fluke? Or did that season expose what Syracuse actually is beneath the quarterback? Well, we're about to find out. Virginia might be the least respected good team in this entire conference, because apparently winning 11 games, reaching the ACC championship game, and producing only the second double-digit win season in school history still gets you picked 6th? 6th. Yeah, 6th. Now, did Virginia overachieve last year? Absolutely. Nobody had this shit happening. Tony Elliott entered the season 11-23 in his first 3 years. Virginia was picked 14th in the ACC, and instead they went 11-3 and ended up playing for the conference title. That is an enormous fucking jump. But I also think people have gone way too far in the other direction and started treating last season like some complete accident. Virginia was a good team, and there are reasons to believe that this year there's still going to be one. The biggest strength is up front. Mikhail Boley and Noah Josie are both preseason All-ACC offensive linemen. Drake Metcalf is back after starting every game, and Monroe Mills returns after missing last season. Defensively, Fisher Carmack is back off the edge, Jason Hammond returns inside, and Virginia has enough experience in the trenches that this isn't some total teardown. There is a lot changing though. Virginia brought in 46 new players, including 31 transfers, and the skilled positions are basically being rebuilt. Only 18% of last year's receiving yards are back. Jamari Taylor is gone after rushing for over 1,000 yards and 14 touchdowns, and Chandler Morris is also gone at quarterback. So Bo Prabula comes over from Missouri, Rico Flores comes over from Notre Dame, and suddenly Tony Elliott has to prove last year wasn't just a magical roster coming together at exactly the right moment. But here's the part everybody keeps ignoring. The schedule is manageable as all hell. Virginia plays primarily teams projected in the bottom half of the ACC and has only one game against a preseason top 5 all-conference team at SMU. So no, I'm not automatically predicting they win another 11 games. But I'm also not throwing Virginia back into the middle of the pack because everybody decided last year was some fucking hallucination. Tony Elliott is clearly building something here. If they take a step backward, fine. Then we'll find out where the remaining holes are. But until somebody knocks them off that level, give Virginia their fucking stripes. Virginia Tech is in a really interesting position because last year this program finally hit the fucking floor. The Okies went 3-9, started 0-3, sent Brent Pry packing almost immediately, and continued wandering through the wilderness they've basically been stuck in since the Frank Beamer era ended. So what do you do when a program reaches the absolute nadir? Apparently you hired James Franklin. And honestly, this makes a weird amount of sense. Franklin has experience taking programs from places where expectations are buried underground and making them matter again. And unlike Penn State, there isn't some Ohio State, Michigan-sized monster hanging over every season here. Save for the Commonwealth Cup, Virginia Tech isn't asking him to immediately conquer some existential rival. They're just asking him to make Virginia Tech look like Virginia Tech again. And right now the bar is laying on the goddamn floor. Bowl eligibility would be progress. Hell, being relevant when December arrives would be progress. There are at least some pieces to work with. Marcellus Hawkins is back after leading the team with almost 750 rushing yards. Aiden Green returns after leading the receivers with 516 yards himself. And defensively, Kamari Copeland is a preseason All-ACC selection after 7.5 tackles for loss and 4.5 sacks. Franklin also brought Ethan Grunkenmeyer with him from Penn State to compete at quarterback, while the offensive line got portal help after allowing 29 sacks last year. And they're gonna need all of it, because the schedule is not giving Franklin any training wheels here. Virginia Tech faces 5 of the teams picked in the ACC's top 6, including a trip to Miami. And they were picked 8th themselves, so I'm not expecting James Franklin to walk into Blacksburg and immediately start chasing playoff spots. This is a reconstruction. Virginia Tech wants to get back to competing for spots in the polls instead of competing for who gets the remote on the couch during bowl season. Just get to 6 wins. Just look competent, please. Give the people a reason to believe this isn't another false start. That's how low things have gotten. But for the first time in a while, I can actually see a path back up. The Demon Deacons are quietly making a name for themselves, which is honestly probably exactly how Wake Forest wants it. They spent most of last season hiding in the shadows of the bigger names in the ACC. They got picked next to last in the conference, and then casually went 9-4 with a bowl win in Jake Dickert's first season. So naturally, after doing all that, they've been picked 13th this year. Apparently, nobody has learned a fucking thing. The strength of this team should once again be the defense. Wake Forest finished 26th nationally in total defense last year, allowing just 328.5 yards per game. There's a lot coming back. Langston Hardy returns after 7 sacks and at least 17 tackles for loss. Aiden Hall is back after 73 tackles. Devon Patterson at 80, and one of their biggest weaknesses they needed to address was cornerback. Enter Bernard Kazi, formerly of LSU and Georgia State, to hopefully stop that position from being a giant fucking weak spot on an otherwise pretty decent unit. The bigger questions are on offense because Damon Claiborne is off to the NFL after being the centerpiece of everything they did last year. Now, Gio Lopez comes over from the smoldering wreck of North Carolina to run the offense. And there is at least some familiarity here. In his previous season before last year, he worked with offensive coordinator Rob Ezel at South Alabama. Lopez threw for nearly 2,600 yards and 18 touchdowns while adding almost 500 yards on the ground and 7 scores. The problem is everything around him is shifting. The offensive line has been shuffled up. The running back room has been reworked, and the receiver room is unsettled outside of Carlos Hernandez, who led the team with 611 yards last year. Wake Forest also has to play 6 teams picked in the top 7 of the ACC, including Miami, who comes to Winston-Salem in September. I'm not expecting them to suddenly win the conference, but after 9 wins in year 1, don't dismiss them just because the media apparently forgot they existed again. Keep flying low, Deacons. Keep being annoying. Let everyone else grab the headlines, because Wake Forest quietly will wait around to ruin somebody's fucking season. Okay, give me Miami and SMU and Charlotte. SMU's schedule is way too favorable for me to ignore, but Miami is simply the most complete team in this conference. They've got the talent, they got the quarterback, and eventually this program has to win the fucking ACC. So, this is the year Miami finally gets it done. I can't believe I'm saying that. Jesus Christ.
Getting